Please, don't let them take me. The elevator doors were already closing when Naomi Brooks slipped through the narrow opening, nearly losing her balance on the polished black marble floor. Rainwater dripped from the edges of her cheap gray coat, forming tiny trembling puddles beneath her worn sneakers. Her chest rose and fell in quick uneven breaths as she pressed the silver button for the top floor with shaking fingers. Outside the hallway, somewhere beyond the closing steel doors, hurried footsteps echoed through the luxury hotel like distant thunder. For one terrible second, Naomi thought the men would reach her before the elevator sealed shut. But the doors slid closed with a soft mechanical whisper, cutting off the sound of pursuit and leaving behind a silence so heavy it almost hurt. Then she realized she wasn't alone. A man stood beside her, tall and impossibly still, dressed in a black tailored suit so perfect it looked carved into him rather than worn. The dim golden elevator lights reflected against the sharp line of his jaw and the dark silk tie resting neatly against his chest. He smelled faintly of cedarwood and cold winter air. Naomi hadn't noticed him when she stumbled inside because fear had swallowed everything else. But now, trapped within the mirrored walls of the private elevator, his presence filled every inch of space. He didn't look surprised. He didn't even look annoyed. He simply watched her with calm unreadable eyes while soft jazz music drifted from hidden speakers overhead. Naomi lowered her gaze quickly. People like him were dangerous in a different way. Wealthy. Powerful. Untouchable. The kind of men who belonged in places where chandeliers glittered like diamonds and a single bottle of wine cost more than her monthly rent. Naomi knew that world well enough to fear it. She cleaned it every night. Her breathing trembled again as she glanced toward the glowing floor numbers slowly climbing higher. 47. 48. 49. Her pulse hammered harder with each second. She could still hear the voices from downstairs inside her head. Find her. She heard too much. Don't let her leave the building. Her fingers curled tightly around the strap of her small canvas bag. Inside it was nothing valuable. Just her phone, a half-empty bottle of water, and the employee badge from the casino lounge where she worked double shifts polishing glasses and scrubbing marble countertops while rich men laughed loud enough to shake the walls. Tonight she had stayed late cleaning one of the private VIP rooms on the restricted floor. She wasn't supposed to hear anything. Invisible people rarely did. But invisible people noticed everything. Naomi swallowed hard as the elevator continued its silent climb toward the clouds above Seoul. Then suddenly another sound shattered the quiet. A sharp voice crackled through the radio clipped near the stranger's wrist. Sir, security reports unauthorized men entering the East Corridor. Naomi froze. The man calmly muted the radio without taking his eyes off her. Not fear. Not curiosity. Just stillness. That frightened her more than shouting ever could. The elevator slowed gently before stopping at the highest floor in the building. Penthouse level. The doors opened into a breathtaking private residence glowing with warm amber light. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed rain sliding across the Seoul skyline like silver threads. Men in dark suits standing near the entrance immediately lowered their heads the moment they saw him. Not one of them looked directly into his eyes. Naomi's stomach dropped. The stranger stepped forward into the penthouse without a word, but before the doors could close behind her, panic finally broke through. She reached out and grabbed the sleeve of his black coat with trembling fingers. Please, she whispered, her voice barely audible. If they ask, tell them I'm your wife. For the first time since she entered the elevator, the man stopped walking. For a long moment, nobody moved. Naomi immediately regretted touching him. Her fingers loosened from the sleeve of his black coat as embarrassment rushed hot across her face. What kind of insane request was that? Pretend to be my wife. She could barely breathe after saying the words aloud. Men like him did not help women like her. Men like him called security. The guards near the penthouse entrance stood perfectly still beneath the warm golden lights, their expressions unreadable. Beyond them, the private residence stretched across the entire top floor of the tower like something from another world. Dark walnut walls gleamed beneath recessed lighting. Rain shimmered against massive glass windows overlooking Seoul far below, where rivers of headlights cut through the storm like ribbons of white fire. Somewhere deeper inside the penthouse, soft piano music floated quietly through hidden speakers. Everything smelled faintly of cedar, coffee, and expensive leather. Naomi felt painfully out of place standing there soaked and trembling in her discount store coat. The stranger finally looked down at her hand still hovering near his sleeve. His face remained calm, almost cold, but there was something unsettling about the silence surrounding him. It was not emptiness. It was control. The kind that made entire rooms obey without being asked. Naomi opened her mouth to apologize, but sudden movement near the elevator cut her off. The silver doors slid open again. 3 men stepped into the penthouse corridor wearing dark rain-soaked jackets. Naomi's stomach tightened instantly. She recognized them from the casino downstairs. One worked private security for the VIP floor. Another was always near the politicians who rented hidden meeting rooms after midnight. The third man she had never seen before, but his sharp eyes scanned the penthouse with the confidence of someone used to getting what he wanted. "There she is," one of them said sharply. Naomi instinctively stepped backward. Her shoulder lightly brushed against the stranger beside her. The men approached quickly before slowing the moment they noticed him standing there. Something shifted immediately in the atmosphere. Naomi noticed it before she understood it. Their confidence cracked. The tallest man forced a smile that did not quite reach his eyes. "Sir," he said carefully, bowing his head slightly. "We are sorry for disturbing you." The woman took something from a private room downstairs. "We simply need to escort her back for questioning." Naomi's heartbeat pounded so hard she thought everyone could hear. "It." She shook her head quickly. "I did not steal anything." Her voice sounded smaller than she wanted. "I was cleaning the conference suite. I heard them talking and they saw me." The men ignored her completely. One took another cautious step forward. "Sir, this is internal business. We will handle it quietly." The stranger said nothing. He simply adjusted the cuff of his black sleeve while staring at the men with unreadable calm. Then one of the guards standing near the penthouse entrance suddenly lowered his head deeper and spoke softly in Korean. Naomi did not understand every word, but she caught the title clearly. Chairman Kong. The color drained from the face of the man closest to her. His posture stiffened instantly. Even the others seemed to stop breathing for half a second. Naomi frowned slightly. Chairman Kong. The name tugged at something buried in her memory. Late-night whispers among casino staff. Rumors traded quietly in employee locker rooms. Stories about a man powerful enough to make prosecutors disappear from television overnight. A ghost hidden behind luxury hotels, shipping companies, and private investment firms. Some called him a businessman. Others called him the most dangerous man in Seoul. Naomi slowly turned toward the stranger beside her. Kong Min-jae finally spoke, his voice low and perfectly calm. "My wife looks frightened." The entire corridor fell silent. The silence after those 4 words felt heavier than the storm outside. "My wife looks frightened." Naomi stared at Kong Min-jae in disbelief, certain she had misunderstood him. But the expression on his face never changed. Calm. Controlled. Untouchable. The 3 men near the elevator suddenly looked as though the air had vanished from the room. The tallest one swallowed hard before forcing an awkward smile. "Chairman Kong, there seems to be a misunderstanding." Min-jae slowly turned his gaze toward him, and even that small movement carried enough weight to quiet the entire corridor. "You accused my wife of theft," he said softly. "That sounds serious." The man's forehead glistened beneath the golden penthouse lights. "We did not realize she was with you, sir." Naomi felt her pulse hammering inside her ears. Wife. The word sounded impossible standing beside a man whose watch alone probably cost more than everything she owned. She glanced toward the floor, embarrassed by the mud stains near the hem of her jeans and the rainwater still dripping from her curls onto the polished marble. Every instinct told her this situation could collapse at any second. Men this powerful did not pretend for free. They always wanted something. But Min-jae did not even look at her again. He simply slipped one hand into the pocket of his black coat while the storm rolled across the windows behind him. "Then allow me to clarify," he said quietly. "She stays here tonight." The men exchanged uneasy glances. Naomi noticed something strange then. It was not merely fear in their faces. It was calculation. Like men trying desperately not to make the wrong move in front of someone far above them. One of them bowed his head lower. "Of course, Chairman Kong." Another quickly pressed the elevator button. None of them argued again. Within seconds, they disappeared behind the closing silver doors without another word. Naomi stood frozen long after they left. Her body still expected danger to return at any moment. The warm penthouse suddenly felt unreal around her. The soft amber lighting. The scent of expensive coffee drifting through the air. The distant piano music. Somewhere below the clouds, Seoul glittered beneath the rain like scattered diamonds. Min-jae finally looked toward one of the guards near the entrance. "Bring her dry clothes and tea." The guard bowed immediately. "Yes, sir." Naomi blinked in surprise. Nobody had spoken to her kindly all night. Not since the chaos downstairs began. She wrapped her arms tightly around herself as the adrenaline slowly faded, leaving behind pure exhaustion. Min-jae walked farther into the penthouse, loosening the cufflinks on his sleeve with quiet precision. Naomi hesitated before following several careful steps behind. The residence was enormous, but strangely empty. No loud music. No glamorous party guests. Just silence and clean modern elegance. Black marble counters reflected the city lights. Shelves lined with leather-bound books stretched across dark walnut walls. A fireplace glowed softly beside a grand piano near the windows. The entire place felt less like a home and more like a fortress floating above Seoul. Naomi stopped near the dining area when she noticed a framed photograph resting alone on a shelf. It showed a much younger Min-jae standing beside an older woman wearing a pale cream hanbok. Unlike the cold expression he carried now, the man in the photo was smiling faintly. The image startled her more than his reputation did. "You should not stand barefoot on marble floors when you are cold." Naomi quickly looked down, realizing she had slipped off her soaked sneakers near the entrance without noticing. Min-jae stood across the room watching her calmly. His voice remained low and unreadable, but not cruel. Naomi suddenly felt very aware of how exhausted she looked. The dark circles beneath her eyes. The trembling in her hands. The cheap canvas bag still hanging from her shoulder like the last piece of her ordinary life. She swallowed nervously. "Why are you helping me?" For the first time all night, Kong Min-jae did not answer immediately. Rain slid slowly down the towering glass windows behind Kong Min-jae, turning the lights of Seoul into blurred rivers of gold and silver. For several quiet seconds, the only sound inside the penthouse was the soft crackling of the fireplace near the piano. Naomi stood motionless near the dining table, clutching the strap of her canvas bag so tightly her knuckles hurt. She immediately regretted asking the question. Men like him were not used to explaining themselves. Especially not to women who cleaned casino floors for hourly wages. But Min-jae did not seem offended. He walked calmly toward a dark marble counter where a silver tea set rested beneath warm recessed lighting. Every movement he made was measured, almost unnaturally controlled, as though the world itself slowed around him. "Because frightened people tell the truth," he finally said. Naomi frowned slightly. "What does that mean?" He poured steaming tea into 2 black porcelain cups before answering. "People with power lie because they can afford to. People with nothing usually cannot." Naomi lowered her eyes. Something about the sentence unsettled her because it felt painfully accurate. She had spent most of her life around powerful people. Wealthy hotel guests. Politicians. Executives who smiled for cameras while treating invisible workers like furniture the second reporters disappeared. She knew how easily rich people rewrote reality. A tired cleaning woman accusing wealthy businessmen would never win that fight. Not in Seoul. Not anywhere. One of the guards approached quietly carrying folded clothes inside a matte black box. He placed it gently beside Naomi before bowing and disappearing without a word. Naomi hesitated before opening it. Inside rested soft cream-colored sweatpants, a long-sleeved cashmere sweater, and clean socks still warm from the dryer. The sight nearly broke her composure. Nobody had taken care of her like this in years. Not since her grandmother passed away back in Chicago. Naomi swallowed the tightness rising in her throat and quickly looked away before anyone noticed. "There is a guest room down the hall," Min-jae said calmly. "You can shower and rest there tonight." Naomi looked at him carefully. "You still have not asked what happened downstairs." Min-jae handed her one of the teacups. His fingers never touched hers. "If you wanted to tell me, you already would have." The answer caught her off guard. Most men demanded explanations before offering kindness. They wanted proof someone deserved saving. But Kang Min-jae stood there offering shelter without interrogation, and somehow that frightened her more than anger would have. Naomi wrapped both hands around the warm porcelain cup, letting the heat settle into her freezing fingers. For the first time all night, her breathing began to steady. She looked around the penthouse again. The place no longer felt cold. Lonely perhaps. But not cold. Her eyes drifted toward the grand piano beside the windows. A single sheet of music remained open beneath a small brass lamp. Dust did not cover the keys. Someone actually played it. That surprised her. Men whispered about Kang Min-jae like he was carved from stone. Crime syndicates feared him. Executives bowed to him. Politicians avoided saying his name aloud. Yet the quiet penthouse filled with books and piano music did not match the monster people described. Naomi carefully set down the teacup. "I heard something in the VIP conference suite tonight," she admitted softly. Min-jae remained silent, listening. There were politicians there. Investors too. They were talking about women being moved through private shipping companies. Her voice tightened. Immigrant workers. Fake visas. Hidden payrolls. The warmth inside the penthouse suddenly seemed to disappear. Even the firelight felt colder somehow. Min-jae's expression did not change, but the atmosphere around him shifted almost invisibly. Heavy. Dangerous. Naomi noticed the guards near the entrance subtly straighten their posture. "And they realized you heard them," he said quietly. Naomi nodded once. "One of the men followed me out of the service hallway." She looked down at the tea trembling slightly in her hands. "I think they were planning to make me disappear before morning." For the first time that night, Kang Min-jae's eyes hardened. The warmth in Kang Min-jae's penthouse faded beneath the weight of Naomi's confession. Outside the massive windows, rain continued sliding down the glass in slow silver streams, but inside the room everything felt still. Too still. Naomi immediately wished she had kept quiet. She had spent the last 3 years learning how survival worked in Seoul. Invisible people survived by lowering their eyes, apologizing quickly, and forgetting the things powerful men said behind closed doors. But tonight she had failed at all three. Min-jae stood near the marble counter with one hand resting lightly beside his untouched teacup. His face revealed almost nothing, yet the atmosphere surrounding him had changed completely. The quiet elegance of the penthouse no longer felt peaceful. It felt controlled, like the calm center of something dangerous. Naomi noticed one of the guards subtly step closer to the hallway entrance after hearing her words. Another murmured softly into an earpiece before disappearing down the corridor. Nobody raised their voice. Nobody panicked. That somehow made it worse. Wealthy men panicked loudly. Powerful men did not need to. "Tell me exactly what you heard," Min-jae said at last. Naomi hesitated. Her fingers tightened around the warm porcelain teacup. I was cleaning the VIP conference suite on the lower casino level. The private room with the black walls and gold screens. Min-jae gave a small nod. He knew the room. The meeting was supposed to end before midnight, Naomi continued softly. But one of the managers told me to wait outside because important guests were still there. She stared down into the dark tea swirling faintly inside the cup. The door did not close all the way. Her voice lowered further. I heard them discussing shipment schedules first. I thought it was business. Then one of the politicians mentioned girls arriving through Busan using entertainment visas. The fireplace crackled quietly nearby. Naomi swallowed hard before continuing. They were laughing about how nobody checks cleaning staff records because immigrants are invisible after they arrive. Min-jae's expression remained unreadable, but the room itself seemed to tighten around her words. Naomi looked toward the city lights outside the windows, trying to steady herself. One man asked what would happen if workers talked to reporters. Another said there would be no reporters because women without legal status disappear all the time. Her stomach twisted remembering the casual tone in their voices. Like they were discussing shipping containers instead of human lives. Then somebody opened the conference room door and saw me standing there with my cleaning cart. The memory sent fresh fear crawling through her chest. I ran before they could stop me. Min-jae slowly lifted his teacup but did not drink from it. Did they see your employee badge? Naomi nodded once. And my face. Silence settled again. Heavy. Measured. Naomi suddenly realized she was standing inside one of the most powerful penthouses in Seoul, confessing dangerous secrets to a man rumored to control half the city's underground economy. A cold thought slipped into her mind. What if he already knew about the trafficking operation? What if the men downstairs worked for him? The realization made her pulse quicken again. She carefully set down the teacup before her trembling hand spilled it. If I caused trouble for you, she said quietly, I can leave. Min-jae finally looked directly at her then. Calm dark eyes. Impossible to read. Do you think I protect people because they are convenient? Naomi opened her mouth but no answer came. He walked slowly toward the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul. From this height the city looked beautiful enough to hide every ugly thing beneath it. Those men downstairs, he said softly, believe money makes them untouchable. Reflections of rain moved across the glass behind him like shifting shadows. I dislike arrogant men. Naomi stared at him uncertainly. You are still helping me. Min-jae glanced toward her over his shoulder. No, he replied quietly. Now I am deciding what to do with them. A sudden knock echoed through the penthouse. One of the guards entered quickly and bowed low. Chairman Kong, he said carefully, Assemblyman Cho has arrived downstairs unexpectedly. The room went silent again. Naomi felt the blood drain from her face. She recognized the name immediately. Assemblyman Cho had been inside the conference suite tonight. The moment Naomi heard the name Assemblyman Cho, her stomach dropped like stone. The warm tea in her hands suddenly felt useless against the cold spreading through her chest. She remembered his face clearly from the private conference suite downstairs. Expensive navy suit. Silver watch. A polished smile that never reached his eyes. He had laughed the loudest when the others joked about invisible workers disappearing. The guard remained near the entrance with his head lowered respectfully. He says the matter downstairs has become a misunderstanding and wishes to apologize personally. Kong Min-jae said nothing for several seconds. Rain tapped softly against the towering windows while the firelight reflected across the black marble floors in slow golden waves. Naomi realized something unsettling then. Nobody in this penthouse moved until Min-jae decided they could. Not the guards. Not the staff. Not even the city. Outside seemed loud enough to disturb him. Finally, Min-jae placed his untouched teacup onto the counter with quiet precision. Tell Assemblyman Cho to wait. The guard bowed deeply. Yes, Chairman Kong. As soon as the man disappeared, Naomi looked up nervously. You should not let him know I am here. Min-jae adjusted the cuff of his sleeve calmly. He already knows. Naomi's pulse quickened. Then why would he come here himself? A faint humorless smile touched Min-jae's face. Because frightened men prefer conversations over uncertainty. Naomi stared at him. The sentence sounded less like an observation and more like experience. Outside, lightning flashed silently over Seoul, briefly illuminating the massive windows like sheets of silver fire. Naomi looked toward the elevator hallway uneasily. If that politician is involved in this, her voice lowered carefully. Then this is bigger than I thought. Much bigger, Min-jae replied. He walked toward the grand piano near the windows and lightly rested one hand against the polished black surface. The people you overheard are not independent criminals. They are businessmen, lawmakers, shipping executives, immigration officials. Naomi felt sick listening to the list. And they all work together? Power protects power, Min-jae said quietly. That is how systems survive. Naomi lowered her eyes. She suddenly understood why the men downstairs had panicked so quickly when they saw her. This was not just corruption hidden inside a casino. It was an entire machine built by wealthy people who assumed nobody beneath them mattered enough to fight back. She thought about the immigrant women mentioned during the meeting. Women cleaning hotels. Washing dishes. Folding laundry inside luxury towers while politicians toasted each other with expensive whiskey upstairs. Women nobody would search for if they disappeared. Naomi's throat tightened painfully. I should have stayed quiet. The words escaped before she could stop them. Min-jae looked toward her immediately. No, the answer came sharp enough to cut through the room. Naomi blinked in surprise. His expression remained calm, but something colder now lived beneath it. Silence is how men like Cho continue operating. Naomi stared down at the floor. But speaking up usually destroys people like me. The penthouse fell quiet again. Somewhere deeper inside the residence, an old clock chimed softly. Min-jae studied her for a long moment before speaking. How long have you lived in Seoul? 3 years. And before that? Chicago. Naomi gave a faint tired smile that barely existed. My grandmother used to tell me America was loud, but Korea was lonely. Min-jae's gaze lingered on her for another silent second. She was not wrong. Naomi almost smiled back before another knock interrupted the moment. A different guard entered quickly this time, visibly tense despite his controlled posture. Chairman Kong, he said carefully, Assemblyman Cho insists on seeing you immediately. He hesitated before adding, he brought reporters. Naomi's eyes widened instantly. Reporters. Her heartbeat stumbled painfully inside her chest. She understood the strategy immediately. If reporters saw her leaving this penthouse beside Kong Min-jae, the story could be twisted into anything. Theft. Blackmail. Scandal. Illegal immigration. Powerful men survived by destroying credibility first. Naomi slowly backed away from the windows. He is trying to trap me. Min-jae's face darkened slightly, though his voice remained perfectly calm. No, he said softly. He is trying to trap me. Naomi felt her heartbeat stumble harder at the mention of reporters waiting downstairs. Suddenly the penthouse no longer felt safe. The towering windows. The quiet firelight. The soft piano music drifting through hidden speakers. All of it seemed fragile now, like a beautiful illusion balancing over something dangerous beneath the surface. She knew exactly how quickly public opinion could destroy someone powerless. One photograph. One false headline. One wealthy politician smiling beside a frightened immigrant worker. By sunrise, nobody would believe her version of the story. Assemblyman Cho would make certain of that. Kong Min-jae remained near the grand piano, one hand resting lightly against the polished black surface while rain shimmered behind him across the Seoul skyline. He did not look angry. Somehow that was worse. Naomi was beginning to understand something terrifying about him. Men who lost control shouted. Men like Min-jae became quieter. How many reporters? He asked calmly. 6 confirmed, the guard answered immediately. 2 camera crews are waiting near the private lobby entrance. Naomi wrapped her arms tightly around herself. They are trying to force me out in public. The guard glanced toward her briefly before lowering his eyes again. Nobody inside the penthouse questioned why she was there. Nobody even looked surprised anymore. Min-jae walked slowly toward the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the rain-soaked city below. No, he said softly. Cho is trying to create leverage. Naomi frowned slightly. Against you? Against uncertainty. He adjusted the cuff of his black sleeve while staring down at the city lights far beneath the clouds. Politicians survive through appearances. If reporters see panic, they smell weakness. Cho wants reassurance that he still controls the situation. Naomi stared at him. And does he? Min-jae finally turned toward her. The faintest shadow of amusement touched his expression for barely a second. If he did, he would not be standing downstairs at 2 in the morning with cameras. The room fell quiet again. Naomi slowly realized something important. Assemblyman Cho was afraid. Truly afraid. Powerful enough to silence workers and manipulate police reports, yet still frightened enough to rush into a storm in the middle of the night hoping to manage Kang Min-jae personally. The realization unsettled her deeply. Just how dangerous was the man standing in front of her? Another guard entered carrying a small tablet device before bowing respectfully. Chairman Kang, the reporters are requesting comment regarding rumors involving a foreign employee from the casino. Naomi's stomach twisted instantly. It had already started. Min-jae held out his hand calmly for the tablet. Headlines flashed across the screen beneath breaking news banners. Unverified reports of theft at luxury casino. Foreign worker connected to private VIP incident. Security concerns involving high-profile guests. Naomi stared at the words in disbelief. Everything was happening exactly the way she feared. Her entire life was being rewritten in real time by people with money and influence. She looked away quickly before panic overwhelmed her again. I should leave before this gets worse. Min-jae lifted his eyes from the tablet slowly. And go where? Naomi opened her mouth but no answer came. He was right. Her apartment address existed in company records. Her immigration paperwork was tied to the casino employer. Her bank account barely held enough money for groceries, much less a sudden escape. She had nowhere safe left to go. The truth settled painfully inside her chest. Min-jae handed the tablet back to the guard. Issue a statement. Yes, Chairman. Tell the press my wife is not available for comment. Naomi froze. The guard bowed immediately without hesitation. Understood. Wife. He said it so naturally now that the word no longer sounded like a temporary lie. Naomi stared at him across the warm golden penthouse lights while rain rolled silently behind him. You cannot keep saying that, she whispered. Why not? Because it is not true. Min-jae studied her quietly for a long moment before answering. Truth matters very little to people like Cho. Naomi felt the weight of those words settle heavily inside the room. Outside, another flash of lightning illuminated the city below. For a brief second, the reflection in the glass showed them standing side by side like strangers trapped inside the same storm. Then Min-jae spoke again, his voice calm and unreadable. Tonight, he said softly, being my wife may be the only thing keeping you alive. Naomi could not stop thinking about the way Kang Min-jae said the word wife. Calm. Certain. As though reality itself simply adjusted around whatever he decided. The rain outside had softened into a steady silver mist drifting across the Seoul skyline, but tension still lingered heavily inside the penthouse. Somewhere below, reporters waited in the lobby hunting for scandal like starving men searching for scraps. Naomi stood near the fireplace holding the sleeves of the cream-colored sweater tightly over her hands. While Min-jae spoke quietly with 2 guards near the entrance in Korean. She could not understand every word, but she noticed the way the men listened to him. Completely still. Completely focused. Nobody interrupted him. Nobody questioned him. It was not fear alone. It was trust sharpened by discipline. That realization unsettled her more than the rumors ever had. Kang Min-jae did not control people through noise or threats. He controlled rooms through certainty. A soft chime suddenly echoed through the penthouse. One of the guards immediately approached with another tablet device. "Chairman Kang," he said carefully, "the live broadcast has started." Naomi felt her stomach tighten again. The guard turned the screen slightly toward Min-jae, but Naomi still caught sight of the television feed. Bright cameras. Flashing headlines. Reporters crowded beneath the luxury hotel awning downstairs while rain shimmered against black umbrellas and expensive sedans. Assemblyman Cho stood near the entrance speaking confidently into microphones with the polished smile of a man used to controlling public narratives. "Tonight's misunderstanding involving a foreign employee has unfortunately been exaggerated online," Cho announced smoothly. "We value the safety and dignity of all workers at our establishments." Naomi stared at the screen in disbelief. Safety and dignity. The same man who joked hours earlier about invisible women disappearing now stood beneath camera lights pretending to care about immigrant workers. Her chest burned with anger so sharp it surprised her. "He is lying," she whispered. Min-jae did not look surprised. "Politicians are performers," he replied calmly. "Most become offended when reality interrupts the script." Naomi looked down at the floor. "People will believe him. Some will." Min-jae handed the tablet back to the guard. "Not the ones who matter." The confidence in his voice made her glance up again. He walked toward a long walnut bookshelf near the piano and removed a thin black folder resting between several leather-bound volumes. Naomi frowned slightly. The folder looked worn from use. Important. Min-jae opened it carefully on the marble dining table beneath the warm pendant lights. Naomi slowly stepped closer before freezing in surprise. Inside were photographs. Financial records. Shipping schedules. Immigration reports. Some pages carried official government stamps. Others showed faces Naomi recognized from the VIP conference suite downstairs. Assemblyman Cho. Casino executives. Men laughing over expensive whiskey while discussing human lives like inventory. Naomi looked up sharply. "You already knew." Min-jae rested one hand against the open folder. "I suspected." "Then why has nobody stopped them?" A shadow crossed his expression then. Small. Brief. But real. Because corruption survives through patience. Naomi stared at the evidence spread across the table. "You have enough to expose all of them." "Not yet." He closed the folder slowly. Men like Cho do not fall from accusations. They fall when their allies stop protecting them. Naomi suddenly understood. This was bigger than revenge. Bigger than politics. Kang Min-jae had been watching these people quietly for a long time, waiting for the right moment to destroy the entire network instead of just embarrassing one politician on television. The realization sent another chill through her. "And now?" she asked softly. Min-jae looked toward the glowing skyline outside the windows. "Now they know there is a witness they cannot control." Before Naomi could answer, the elevator doors at the far end of the penthouse suddenly opened again. Every guard in the room straightened instantly. A woman stepped out wearing an elegant ivory coat and carrying a structured black handbag beneath one arm. She was older, poised, and carried herself with the effortless grace of old money. The moment her eyes landed on Naomi standing beside Kang Min-jae, surprise flickered briefly across her face. "Min-jae," she said carefully. "Why are reporters downstairs claiming you suddenly have a wife?" The woman's voice carried the smooth elegance of someone accustomed to entering rooms where everybody listened. Naomi instinctively stepped backward from the marble dining table, suddenly aware again of the oversized sweater hanging loosely on her frame and the damp curls still falling around her shoulders. The older woman standing near the elevator was breathtaking in a quiet, intimidating way. Her ivory coat draped perfectly over her shoulders, and a strand of pearls rested against her collarbone beneath the warm penthouse lights. Even the guards lowered their heads slightly deeper in her presence. Naomi immediately understood this was not just another wealthy guest. This woman belonged here. Kang Min-jae's expression softened almost imperceptibly when he looked at her. "Mother," he said calmly. Naomi blinked in surprise. The elegant woman's eyes moved slowly between them. First Min-jae. Then Naomi. Then the black folder still open on the marble table containing photographs and financial records tied to the trafficking operation. Her posture remained composed, but Naomi noticed the faint tension in her gaze immediately. "You brought reporters to your building at 2 in the morning?" she asked quietly. "Or did someone else make that decision for you?" Min-jae closed the folder without answering directly. Assemblyman Cho became nervous. That usually means trouble. She placed her handbag gently onto the counter before finally stepping farther into the penthouse. Naomi lowered her eyes politely, uncertain whether she should introduce herself or disappear entirely. She suddenly felt painfully out of place standing inside a private family moment she never should have witnessed. But Min-jae's mother approached her first. "You must be freezing." The unexpected kindness caught Naomi off guard. "I am okay," she answered quickly. The older woman studied her face carefully for a moment, and Naomi had the strange feeling she was being evaluated far beyond appearances. Not judged. Measured. "No," the woman said softly. "You are frightened." Naomi swallowed hard but said nothing. Min-jae quietly moved toward the fireplace while his mother continued observing Naomi with calm intelligence. "What is your name?" "Naomi Brooks." "American?" Naomi nodded once. "Chicago." Something thoughtful flickered across the woman's expression. "My husband studied finance in Illinois when he was young." Her voice carried a faint trace of nostalgia before fading. "Again. He used to complain about Chicago winters every Christmas." Naomi managed the smallest smile. The warmth of the conversation felt surreal considering reporters and politicians were waiting downstairs hunting for scandal. Min-jae's mother finally looked toward her son. "How serious is this?" The room fell still again. Min-jae answered without hesitation. "Serious enough that Cho arrived personally." His mother's eyes darkened slightly. "Then it is worse than I thought." Naomi stared between them in confusion. "You knew something was happening too?" The older woman gave a slow nod. "Women have been disappearing from service industries across Seoul for over a year." Her expression tightened with quiet sadness. "Cleaning staff. Hostesses. Foreign workers. Nobody with money ever notices when poor women vanish." Naomi felt cold hearing the words spoken aloud. Until now, part of her still wanted to believe she misunderstood the meeting downstairs. But hearing confirmation from someone else made the reality unavoidable. Min-jae's mother looked toward the rain-covered skyline beyond the windows. "Your father would have hated this." The sentence hung quietly in the air. Naomi glanced toward the framed photograph near the bookshelf again. The younger version of Kang Min-jae smiling faintly beside his mother suddenly seemed much more human than the feared chairman standing before her now. "Mother," Min-jae said softly, "reporters will continue waiting downstairs until they get a statement." She turned toward him calmly. "Then give them one." Naomi's stomach tightened instantly. "No," she said quickly. "Please do not involve me publicly." Min-jae's mother looked at her carefully. "Child, they already have." Naomi opened her mouth but no words came. The older woman stepped closer before gently adjusting the sleeve of Naomi's oversized sweater the way someone might comfort a frightened daughter. "The question now," she said quietly, "is whether you stand alone when the story breaks." Naomi felt emotion tighten painfully in her chest. It had been years since anyone touched her with simple kindness instead of obligation. Min-jae watched the interaction silently from across the room before finally speaking. Prepare the press room downstairs, he ordered calmly. Every guard in the penthouse immediately moved. The penthouse transformed within minutes. Guards moved swiftly through the hallways with quiet precision while assistants arrived carrying tablets, folders, and secure phones that buzzed softly beneath the warm lighting. The calm luxury Naomi first noticed when she entered now revealed its true nature. This was not merely a home. It was a command center. Rain continued sweeping across the massive windows overlooking Seoul, but inside the penthouse everything moved according to Kang Min-jae's decisions. Naomi stood near the fireplace trying to steady her breathing while Min-jae's mother sat gracefully at the marble dining table reviewing documents from the black folder. Her elegant posture never changed, yet Naomi could feel the growing concern hidden beneath her composed expression. Cho escalated too quickly, she murmured quietly. That means someone inside the network panicked. Min-jae adjusted the cufflinks on his black shirt before answering. Good. Panic creates mistakes. Naomi glanced between them uneasily. They discussed corrupt politicians and criminal operations with the calm focus of chess players analyzing a board. Nobody raised their voice. Nobody dramatized the danger. Somehow that made the situation feel even more serious. One of the guards approached holding a tablet displaying the live news coverage downstairs. The reporters are requesting confirmation regarding the marriage rumors, he said carefully. Several media outlets are already broadcasting speculation. Naomi closed her eyes briefly. Marriage rumors. Her entire life had changed in less than 2 hours because she stepped into the wrong elevator during a storm. Min-jae's mother looked toward her gently. Naomi. She opened her eyes again. Yes? You still have time to leave before this becomes permanent in the public eye. Naomi swallowed hard. The offer sounded kind, but impossible. She imagined stepping outside alone into the flashing cameras waiting downstairs. Assemblyman Cho smiling politely while reporters surrounded her with microphones. Casino executives calling her unstable. Immigration officials questioning her visa status. By morning she would become another disposable headline. Foreign worker causes scandal at luxury hotel. She already knew how stories like that ended. Min-jae watched her silently from across the room. If you leave now, he said calmly, Cho controls the narrative. Naomi looked down at her trembling hands. And if I stay? Then he loses control of it. The answer settled heavily inside her chest. She suddenly understood the real battle happening tonight. This was no longer just about protecting her. It was about forcing powerful men into the open before they could erase the truth quietly. A soft knock interrupted the silence. Another guard entered and bowed deeply. The press room is prepared, Chairman Kang. Naomi's pulse quickened immediately. You are really going downstairs? Min-jae picked up the black folder from the table. Yes. With me? He looked at her calmly. You asked me to act like your husband. Naomi felt heat rush into her face despite the fear twisting inside her stomach. Before she could respond, Min-jae's mother stood and approached her slowly. She removed a delicate silver pin from her own coat and carefully attached it to Naomi's cream sweater near the collar. The gesture felt strangely intimate. Protective. My husband gave me this when I was 24, she said softly. Naomi looked down at the small silver camellia flower resting against the fabric. I cannot accept something valuable. You are not borrowing jewelry, the older woman replied gently. You are borrowing strength. Naomi felt emotion tighten painfully in her throat again. She had spent years surviving alone in a foreign country where kindness often came with conditions. Yet inside this penthouse, surrounded by dangerous people and political scandal, she had somehow encountered more humanity than she ever expected. Min-jae walked toward her then, stopping close enough that she could smell cedarwood and rain lingering faintly on his black coat. The cameras downstairs will ask difficult questions, he said quietly. Do not look at them. Naomi nodded nervously. Then. Where do I look? His dark eyes held hers steadily for the first time all night. At me. Outside the penthouse windows, lightning flashed across the sleeping city below. Then the elevator doors opened again, and Kang Min-jae offered her his hand. Naomi stared at Kang Min-jae's outstretched hand while thunder rolled softly beyond the penthouse windows. For a brief second, fear rooted her in place. Not because she doubted him anymore, but because taking his hand meant stepping fully into a world she did not understand. Cameras. Politicians. Criminal networks hidden behind luxury hotels and government smiles. Once she entered that elevator beside him, there would be no returning to the quiet invisible life she lived before tonight. Yet when Naomi finally placed her trembling hand into his, Min-jae's grip remained steady and warm, grounding her in a way she did not expect. Neither of them spoke as the elevator doors closed behind them. Soft instrumental music drifted through the private elevator while Seoul glittered beneath the storm outside. Naomi focused exactly where Min-jae told her to. On him. Not the cameras waiting below. Not the headlines already spreading across television screens. Him. Standing beside her in his black tailored coat with calm eyes and impossible composure, as though descending into scandal at 2 in the morning was simply another business meeting. The elevator stopped with a soft chime. The doors opened directly into the private press lobby downstairs, and the world exploded with light. Camera flashes burst across the marble hallways like lightning. Reporters surged forward behind security barriers shouting questions over one another while microphones stretched through the air like weapons searching for weakness. Chairman Kang, is the marriage rumor true? Who is the woman beside you? Are these allegations connected to Assemblyman Cho? Is there an investigation involving your casino properties? Naomi's breath nearly caught in her chest at the noise, but Min-jae never released her hand. Security guards moved beside them with practiced precision, creating a calm path through the chaos. Naomi kept her eyes fixed on him exactly as instructed. Not the cameras. Him. She noticed then that Min-jae's expression never changed no matter how loud the reporters became. No irritation. No panic. Just complete control. Near the center of the press room, Assemblyman Cho stood beneath bright studio lights wearing the same polished smile Naomi remembered from the conference suite upstairs. But the moment his eyes landed on Kang Min-jae walking beside her, something inside that smile cracked. Tiny. Brief. But unmistakable. Fear. The reporters noticed it too. Questions immediately shifted direction. Assemblyman Cho, do you know this woman? Sir, are you connected to the alleged trafficking claims? Chairman Kang, is your wife accusing government officials of corruption? Cho quickly raised both hands in a gesture of practiced calm. There appears to be confusion fueled by online misinformation. His voice remained smooth, but Naomi noticed a thin sheen of sweat near his temples beneath the camera lights. The young woman involved tonight is clearly distressed, and unfortunately certain rumors have spiraled out of control. Naomi felt anger rise sharply inside her chest again. Distressed. Rumors. He was trying to reduce her into something unstable and forgettable before she could even speak. Then Kang Min-jae finally stepped forward. The room fell silent almost instantly. Even the reporters lowered their voices without realizing it. Min-jae released Naomi's hand only long enough to place the black folder onto the podium table before him. Assemblyman Cho is correct about one thing, he said calmly. Every camera in the room focused entirely on him. There has been misinformation tonight. Cho's smile returned slightly, hopeful for a fraction of a second. Then Min-jae opened the folder. Photographs slid across the podium beneath the bright media lights. Financial transfers. Shipping manifests. Immigration records. Images from private meetings. Naomi heard the collective intake of breath ripple through the reporters like sudden wind. Min-jae's voice remained perfectly steady. The misinformation, he continued quietly, is that this investigation began tonight. Assemblyman Cho's face drained of color. Completely. Reporters erupted with questions so loudly security struggled to contain them. Naomi stared at the documents spread across the podium in disbelief. Kang Min-jae had not walked into this room to defend himself. He had walked in prepared to destroy an entire network. The press room descended into chaos the moment the documents became visible beneath the television lights. Reporters surged forward shouting over one another while camera flashes exploded endlessly across the marble walls. Assemblyman Cho stood frozen beside the podium, his polished public smile collapsing piece by piece under the weight of the evidence spread before him. Naomi remained slightly behind Kang Min-jae, her pulse hammering so hard she could barely hear individual questions anymore. Shipping records. Immigration transfers. Offshore accounts connected to casino executives and government officials. Everything the powerful man downstairs believed would remain buried forever now sat exposed beneath live national broadcasts. Chairman Kang, how long have you possessed these documents? Assemblyman Cho, are you denying involvement? Is there evidence of labor trafficking connected to government contracts? Cho quickly lifted his hands again, but the confidence was gone now. These accusations are outrageous, he snapped. This material could easily be fabricated. Naomi watched panic flicker openly across his face for the first time. The cameras noticed it too. Reporters immediately pressed closer. Then why were you searching for the witness tonight? One journalist shouted. Why were security teams chasing an employee through the hotel? Another reporter raised a photograph from the folder showing Cho entering a restricted shipping terminal near Busan. Can you explain this image, sir? Cho's jaw tightened visibly beneath the lights. He turned sharply toward Naomi then, and for one terrible second she felt the full weight of his anger land directly on her. Not rage because she lied. Rage because she survived long enough to speak. Instinctively, Naomi stepped back. But before fear could fully settle into her chest, Kang Min-jae moved slightly in front of her without even looking. Away from the reporters. The gesture was small. Quiet. Yet the entire room noticed. So did Cho. Silence briefly rippled through the press room again. Min-jae finally spoke once more, his voice calm enough to cut through the noise without effort. Naomi Brooks is under my personal protection. Every camera turned instantly toward Naomi. Her breath caught painfully in her chest. She had spent years becoming invisible inside luxury buildings where nobody remembered the names of cleaning staff. Yet now dozens of reporters stared directly at her beneath blinding lights while one of the most feared men in Seoul publicly stood beside her. Any attempt to threaten, discredit, or intimidate her, Min-jae continued quietly, will be treated as interference in an ongoing investigation. Assemblyman Cho's face paled completely. Naomi suddenly understood why everyone feared Kang Min-jae. Not because he shouted. Not because he displayed power loudly. But because when he finally chose a side, entire systems shifted around that decision. Within minutes, security officers entered the press room carrying official warrants. Reporters erupted again as government investigators approached Cho and several casino executives standing near the back exits. Nobody resisted. Nobody even spoke. The room had already turned against them. Naomi watched in stunned silence as the untouchable men from the conference suite downstairs suddenly looked painfully ordinary beneath the camera lights. Sweating. Nervous. Human. One of the reporters noticed Naomi standing behind Min-jae and called out loudly, "Miss Brooks, what made you come forward tonight?" Naomi froze. Every microphone turned toward her instantly. Fear tightened inside her throat again, but then she remembered what Min-jae told her earlier. Look at me. So she did. Across the chaos of flashing cameras and shouting reporters, Kang Min-jae met her eyes steadily. Calm. Certain. Grounding her again without speaking. Naomi slowly faced the reporters. Her voice trembled at first, but only slightly. Because women like me disappear every day, she said softly. The entire room quieted. Cleaning staff. Immigrant workers. Women nobody important. Notices. Her fingers tightened around the sleeve of the cream sweater she still wore beneath Min-jae's coat draped over her shoulders. Tonight I realized silence only protects the people causing harm. Somewhere near the back of the room, a reporter lowered her camera slowly. Another looked down at the documents spread across the podium with visible emotion. Naomi swallowed hard before continuing. Invisible people deserve protection too. Complete silence followed her words. Not forced silence. Human silence. The kind that arrives when truth finally lands inside a room full of people who can no longer pretend not to see it. Then, quietly, Kang Min-jae reached for Naomi's hand again. 3 months later, the rain finally stopped over Seoul. Spring sunlight spilled across the city in soft golden waves, warming sidewalks that once reflected only cold neon and stormwater. News stations still talked about the scandal that shattered political careers and exposed hidden trafficking networks operating behind luxury businesses across the country. Executives disappeared from boardrooms. Government investigations expanded weekly. Entire agencies quietly replaced leadership overnight. But for Naomi Brooks, the most important change was much smaller. It was the sound of women laughing safely inside a building where nobody was afraid anymore. The community center stood on a quiet street overlooking the Han River, surrounded by cherry blossom trees beginning to bloom beneath the April sky. The sign near the entrance read Camellia House in simple silver letters. Inside, immigrant women gathered around long wooden tables drinking tea, studying Korean language textbooks, and helping each other fill out job applications without fear of exploitation. Some arrived carrying nothing but backpacks and exhaustion. Others brought children clutching stuffed animals while volunteers prepared warm meals in the kitchen. Naomi walked slowly through the center with a stack of paperwork in her arms, still amazed that this place truly existed. Safe housing. Legal support. Employment assistance. Counseling services. Everything she once desperately needed during her loneliest nights in Seoul now existed for women who thought nobody saw them. Miss Brooks, one of the volunteers, called softly, smiling from across the hallway. Naomi smiled back automatically before stepping into the sunlit office overlooking the river. Fresh flowers rested near the windows beside neatly organized case files. For the first time in years, her life no longer felt temporary. A quiet knock interrupted her thoughts. Naomi looked up as the office door opened slowly. Kang Min-jae stood there in a charcoal coat with spring sunlight falling across one side of his face. No guards followed him today. No reporters. No flashing cameras. Just him. Calm as always. Naomi felt her heartbeat soften into something warmer now whenever she saw him. Not fear anymore. Not uncertainty. Trust. "You are late," she said gently. The faintest hint of amusement touched his expression. "Traffic." Naomi laughed quietly. It still surprised her whenever he made jokes small enough to sound human instead of untouchable. His eyes drifted around the office before settling on the women visible through the glass hallway outside. "The center is growing faster than expected." "So are the waiting lists," Naomi replied softly. Min-jae gave a small nod before placing a folder onto her desk. Naomi opened it curiously and froze in surprise. Inside were property contracts for another building expansion near Busan. Additional housing. More funding. More protection programs. Naomi looked up immediately. Min-jae, he adjusted the cuff of his sleeve calmly, almost embarrassed by gratitude. No woman should disappear because society decided she was invisible. The words settled gently between them. Months ago, Naomi met Kang Min-jae inside a storm while running for her life through a luxury hotel. The world called him dangerous. Feared him. Whispered his name like a warning. But standing there beneath warm spring sunlight, Naomi finally understood the truth about powerful people. The most frightening ones were not always the cruelest. Sometimes the most dangerous man in the room became the only reason kindness survived inside it. Min-jae glanced toward the silver camellia pin still resting against Naomi's blazer collar. His mother insisted she keep it after the investigation ended. "My mother wants you to join us for dinner tonight," he said quietly. Naomi smiled softly. "Is that an invitation or an order?" With my mother, he replied, it is usually both. Naomi laughed again, and for the first time in a very long while, the sound carried no fear behind it at all. Outside the windows, cherry blossoms drifted gently across the river like pale pink snow beneath the sunlight. And somewhere far behind them, the storm that once changed everything had finally passed. Sometimes the people the world overlooks become the ones brave enough to expose its darkest truths. And sometimes protection arrives from the last person anyone expects. If this story touched your heart, do not forget to like, subscribe, and share for more stories that remind us dignity, courage, and kindness still matter.